That's right. Okay, I think we have everybody loaded there. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Recycled Water Committee of Monterey One Water. We're here at the boardroom of Monterey One Water in Monterey, California. It's November 14th, 2024 at 3 p.m. Or actually, we'll go say 3:04, and I'll ask for a roll call.
Rhonda,
Here.
Castroville, Marina Coast,
Here.
Monterey,
Here.
Pacific Grove.
Here. All right, we have 4 members of the committee present, and at this time, I will ask staff if there are any additions or subtractions from the agenda.
Yes, Chair Smith. We'd like to remove item 8 and bring it back to you at a later date.
Very good. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda as amended.
So move. Second.
All right, so that is a motion and a second to go forward with the agenda. Absent item 8, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimously. And we will go on to item 5, public comment. This is general public comment on matters not appearing on today's agenda. Are there any members of the public online that would like to comment on items that are not on the agenda? Seeing none, noting for the record that the boardroom has, I believe, only staff members and consultants. We will move on, close public comment, general public comment, move on to item 6, consider approval of Recycled Water Committee minutes of October 17th, 2024. And at this time, I'll entertain a motion.
So move. Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll take it out to the public. Anyone wishing to comment online on our minutes from the last meeting? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and close public comment on this item. Any discussion? No further discussion. I'll take a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, move on to item 7. It passes unanimously. And we'll get an update on Pure Water Monterey. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Lindow.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. I hope you guys recognize me. I've been put on a quarterly update basis. I think because Paul and Matt thought I was talking too much, so I'll have to be really careful. Pure Water Monterey, the existing water production facilities, doing good. Right now, we're at about 16,200 acre feet since inception. The first quarter, July through October, was about 90% production of what we saw last year. Of course, it's really the wet months that make or break a given water year, but so far so good. Okay, in terms of expansion, to remind you, if we could work with this slide a little bit. It's not here, it's not showing up quite as accessible. To remind you, we've got 2 projects under construction right now. The $17 million plant expansion and the $24 million injection well phase 4 project. Okay, both projects are about half built right now. So far, we're fairly happy with our contractors. There's a lot of work still to be done, a lot of intricate work still to be mechanical, electrical. The AWPF expansion, we expect that to start up in the early summer of 2025. Injection well phase 4, we're looking at early fall 2025. As it turns out, in the last couple of months, the construction of the projects are no longer the critical path, or, how long is the total project going to take? It's now permitting. Looks like permitting is looking like about a year from today is when we're going to get our final permit. So it kind of dovetails with the completion of injection well phase 4. So we can still say we're going to be done by the end of 2025, but it's the Division of Drinking Water we're spending a lot of time with. They're taking a long time to process our permit. And then ultimately we can then move forward to the Regional Water Quality Control Board to get our final permit. But that's important. So it's no longer construction, it's permitting that's driving the critical path. And that's a little frustrating for the staff, because we have less control over the permitting, the regulatory agencies, than our own construction. Next slide, please. Give you some pictures of ongoing construction. Again, AWPF building, a $50 million facility, the crown jewel, the Pure Water Monterey. the envy of a dozen other water agencies who'd love to have one here in California. Next slide, please. This is my favorite slide of the whole rack. Believe it or not, on AWPF, we got our electrical switchgear in 2 months early. So for this particular project, we thought this equipment was going to be the critical path, the thing we were waiting for. Because you remember in COVID, when the whole supply chain got wrapped around the axle, this was what slowed projects down. We got that early on AWPF, so a very good sign for this project. Next slide, please. We've got some big mechanical equipment going in. We have 3 big pumps, intra-plant pumps. That's about $1 million worth of pumps you can see there that we've now dropped into place. Of course, they can't be turned on yet. We don't have power to them yet, but this is also a major step forward. Next slide, please. This is just one particular chemical tank that's been installed now, hydrogen peroxide. It's part of the final disinfection process. The picture on the right basically highlights the fact that every piece of equipment we've got out there, this is a fairly simple piece of equipment with just a level indicator, ultimately has to have remote and automatic controls wired. So the M1W staff up in the main control room can run or monitor this particular piece of equipment. Okay, let's move on to the next slide, which is injection well phase 4. I'm gonna maybe start with, again, this is a complex picture, what's already there and what we're doing. So again, we have the reservoir, this blue pipeline to there, our 4 existing wells is already there. It was there before we started expansion, okay? Since expansion started, we connected the eastern and western well fields. Okay, so that was a nice piece of work. Deep injection well number 5, that's been built. I've got a couple photos of that. We're very excited about that well. It looks like it's going to be our biggest well in terms of injection capacity, a very thirsty well. DIW6 is built, but we're testing it right now. It looks hopeful it might be as good, okay? But coming up, what will be most noticeable is we're about to begin construction on the pipeline up to the reservoir. Remember to complete that loop. Let's go forward one slide and then I'll want to go back a slide. So, no, go forward one slide. Okay, so we've got 10,000 linear feet of 24-inch pipe waiting. It's been there for a while. So we're going to start installing this pipe starting December 2nd. Okay, let's go back to that slide. Now, what's interesting about this is again, it's kind of up the hill, if you will. It's a combination of property access permissions that we have. We've got some seaside permission. From here to here is the county, where we actually have a permanent easement already in place. And then we've got seaside permission really up to the doorstep of where we tie in to the Marina Coast system. And I understand we're still working through some interagency paperwork on that tie-in.
Yeah, so there's an easement swap that we've been working on with Marina Coast for a relatively short section, frankly, that there are some easements associated with Pure Water Monterey that Marina Coast would like to clean up, as well as they would like an additional easement by the tertiary plant at our treatment plant. And I think generally speaking, we've agreed in concept with that. Then I was talking to Rem, and he wanted to loop in an easement for the outfall in this whole grouping as well, which I thought was inappropriate this time, and I wanted to try to keep them separate, particularly being that an agreement that we worked out with Cal-Am was separate. Let's keep the outfall thing separate. So Matt has been working with Garrett Hartel, your district engineer, right? As just like an MOU, because as Dave mentioned, our contractor is ready to roll. I don't know if anyone's gone up Eucalyptus recently. I rode my bike up there a couple weeks ago, and there's all that pipe just sitting there. So we're trying to work this out so we can not delay the contractor at this point. I don't know. I think you were waiting back to hear from Garrett on an MOU. Just, we don't know that we can get the easements done as easily as an agreement with a partner.
Yeah, we're hoping to hear back from Marina Coast as soon as tomorrow about whether they'll sign on to this memorandum of understanding, which again is just an interim arrangement until the city of Seaside can convey some parcels of land to Marina Coast. So then Marina Coast can convey those easements to us in one transaction instead of multiple transactions. So we're hopeful to get a favorable response from Marina Coast very soon.
So just a final point of info for the timing of that. So the contractor will be up to Parker Flats by Christmas. He'll be up to within about 125 feet of the tie-in to Marina Coast by mid-January. That final tie-in, we actually have to do a hot tap to tie into the pipe so we don't have to do any shutdowns, et cetera. There's flexibility on that tie-in, but really we've got permissions all the way. Just need that final box checked with Marina Coast. Let's go 2 slides, please. So this is DIW5, as I said. We've tested it. So the way you test it is you pull water out. This isn't our final configuration. That's a test pump. So you can know how much you can inject by how much you can pull out, because it's a constant injection and backwashing. You test the water quality. You bring every design discipline into the loop. Next slide. So that's all checking out. We're very happy about that. This casing, which is for DIW6, this is actually already in the ground. I wanted to show you what was stockpiled there while that was going. This happened within the last month. And then final slide is an action shot of DIW6. This rig has now actually come down. And as I said, they're going to start the testing of the well to check the capacity of DIW6. But we're very happy that both these wells look like they're big producers for us. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you very much. Committee member questions and comments? Director Williamson?
Well, maybe this is why they asked for you to come back every quarter, because it seems like a lot's been going on and a lot to celebrate. So appreciate seeing you. Couple of questions for the permits. So you said this time next year. So we're looking past beyond the punch list in which we currently have that. Is that, I just want to confirm that I am understanding that correctly.
So if you were to look at the Gantt chart that's in the staff, attached to the staff report, it shows the final completion of injectable phase 4 at the end of October. So that's a constructional hard date. And then it shows us going to the regional board for their early December meeting to get the permit. And once you have a hearing and the permit is approved, the permit is immediately effective. But there's no 60 or 90-day probation period. We're trying to move up the regional board. They have an October meeting. They even have an August meeting. But really right now for permitting, everything is, I don't want to say held up by DDW, but DDW is taking most of the time, more time than originally anticipated. Maybe the GM would like to.
Yeah, I just want to say, you're absolutely right. The punch list and closeout. So obviously we'll be producing water before the punch list and closeout. And on the injection wells, that is October 23rd. So in theory, we're going to be all said and done and sitting waiting on the permitting aspect. So when Dave says that the critical path at this point is the permitting, it's truly working through things with DDW so we can get the buy-in and get to the regional board for that WDR. And I know that was a bunch of acronyms, so I apologize for that. But that is somewhat upsetting in all honesty, because if you look at first water of the lineup above, August 25th for the injection wells, and then go up to the treatment plant and you have substantial completion in May, the construction aspect is going fine. It's just that permitting is getting bogged down.
And then the permitting, is for the wells?
It's for the new volume. So they say you can't use the new wells to achieve the higher volume of injection. It's understood between the agency and the regulators. I mean, we're going to have some 7-day tests, performance tests. They're built into both these construction packages. So Jose and his team, Daryl, et cetera, they'll have ironed out all the wrinkles. So we get to start everything up. It's just we can't be pushing our equipment to the 5,700. And the regulators, they understand that we need those permits to take advantage of that next wet winter. And so again, our permitting team is hoping to push up the regional board from the December to October, possibly August board, but we have to get through the DDW process first.
Which you do have a meeting next, no,
The
December
5th of,
5th?
the 5th of December, we have our next big powwow with the DDW people and the regional board people.
So we are efforting on all this. It's just trying to keep them moving along.
So when we talk about increasing capacity, because we do have the 4 wells that we have now, does that preclude us from fully utilizing and leveraging the capacity of the 4 wells that we have now, or is it specifically focused on the 2 additional wells?
No, right now we're permitted to put in 3,700 in the ground, and we can't put in any more until we get an updated permit.
So we can use all 4 wells up to that 3,700.
Yeah. I guess I'm trying to think through this a little bit. So, and it's for the year, right? So it's from January to December. And so at that point, do we feel confident that we would have reached the 3,750, like whatever the capacity is at that point? Right? Like, is there anything wrong with us ramping up beyond what we would normally be doing until we get the permit? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, so certainly push it all the way to 3,700 in
Yeah.
hopes that the permit comes the next day and we can continue.
Yeah.
What Tammy and I were just talking about is the water purchase agreement is on a fiscal year basis. Our permit, I don't know if that's on a calendar year or a water year basis. So we would need to check some of these things
The
and,
calendar year.
pardon me?
It's most likely calendar year. I'm not sure.
We would just need to check this to see where we're going to be at.
Okay. Okay. So just throwing that out there, another little thought while I'm on that one is, because I know that sometimes the wells are offline, right, to backwash, and I don't know, how often are they backwashed?
You backwash every other week?
No, every week.
Every week for 2 hours.
Okay. 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 And then I'm gonna leave that one for now. And then you were talking about thirsty wells, which is a really interesting concept of how the 5th well is really thirsty. I guess I'm wondering if you can describe what makes that thirstier than the other 2 wells.
So every well again is 1,000 feet deep, and then there's anywhere from 500 of that 1,000 feet. There's anywhere from 300 to 500 feet that's not solid casing, but screened casing. So that's where we're actually pushing the water into the Santa Margarita aquifer. Okay, so the aquifer depth increases and decreases as you come up the hill, and you know which part, the sweet part of the aquifer you hit, to some degree is luck. Okay, but we also like these wells because they're farther away from any other wells, so the impacts the travel time of this water to any existing wells much longer. So the regulators like that part very much. So, for example, our existing wells range from 800 GPM to 1100. So we've got at least one, rural workhorse well. DIW 5 is 1100 at least.
Wow.
Okay. It might top out at 1200. It's actually limited by how big your backwash pump is, because you have to backwash at 2x the amount of water you inject. It's just a hydrogeologist rule of thumb, good practice. And so if we have two 1,100 GPM wells in the eastern well field, that'll really add the reliability and capacity of the total 6 well field.
Can I respond to some of your other questions? So I just got some info. The waste discharge, the WDR, is based on water year from October 1 through September 30th. So to your question, hypothetically, come October 1, we can put water in the ground beyond anything. But the limiting factor per the permit is we can't inject more than 5 million gallons per day. So even though we're going to have a plant that's sitting there that can produce 7.6 million gallons a day, we won't be able to do more than 5 until we get the permit approved.
Okay.
And thanks to Allison for that clarification.
Thank you, Allison.
Did she just text you that?
Yeah.
That's a team effort right there. Two more questions.
5 minutes?
And then the shallow wells, how are those I mean, I know that those
They're
are,
just putting along. They're, it's a modest 50 GPM per well.
okay, okay. We're still using them to the extent that we can.
Yes.
And not gonna ever do that again, probably. Okay, and then the last question is, and I don't know if this goes to our rep from Marina Coast, but I'm just wondering, are there any concerns in regards to us moving forward with the easements from Marina Coast's perspective?
So happy if,
Director Moore,
thank you. For the chair's permission.
question to you.
The backstory is a little bit complicated, maybe a little more than complicated, and I'm not sure I'm going to get every little legal aspect of it right. But the property at the top of the hill originally was owned by the Army and had a raised water tank on it. Raised water tanks are dangerous because we're in earthquake country, and you put a big bolus of water way up in the air, and that falls on somebody and creates problems. So we were supposed to get that entire property at the top of the hill, which it turns out consisted of 5 or 6 separate surveyed Army parcels. Somehow in the document that was transmitted to FORA and then transmitted to Marina Coast Water District for the entirety of the Army's water system, which included fee title parcels and easements and roads and so forth, that was a 300 or 400 page document of survey stuff with no maps. And everybody who slogged through it at the time missed the fact that somehow, for some reason, which we haven't been able to unearth, the parcels at the top of that hill were not deeded to Marina Coast. Instead, they were deeded to the city of Seaside. Seaside didn't know this. Marina Coast didn't know this for a decade until we got around to, hey, we got to take this big old tank down, but we still need potable water tank up there for pressure purposes. We had, or the Army had originally leased on that raised tank, a cellular antenna that some of the cellular companies were using. So we told them, hey, you're going to have to take your antenna down. They go, whoa, wait a minute, we need cellular coverage here. We said, well, we've got plenty of space. We've got these 4 or 5 parcels. You can put up a temporary antenna there. They then looked up who owned the parcels. They found out it was Seaside. They applied to Seaside for a permit to put up that. And Seaside went, ooh, Marina Coast is illegally on our land. We're operating a system, they had us, well, I won't say what they had us by, but
Why not?
so we ended up in a deal which gave them, what was it, 5,000 acre feet of free water for Bayonet and Black Horse. So for about 6 years, Bayonet and Black Horse paid nothing for water. That came out of the ratepayers of the Ord community. But as part of the deal, all 5 of those parcels, except one that apparently is still in Army hands, were supposed to be deeded fee title by the city of Seaside to us. They've only done 2. And their current city attorney is, I don't know, it just seems to be taking a very long time to deed those parcels over. If those parcels were in our hands, there wouldn't be any MOU. There would simply be an easement that Marina Coast would be granting to Monterey One Water. So I don't know what legal complications this is introducing, but you're trying to work through it with REM.
Right. And so what you have before you is an MOU that actually says, hey, when you get that land, we understand it's seaside, but when you get it, you're going to allow us to go across it. And in turn, we're providing easements that you want on our treatment plant site and where your conveyance pipeline crosses some of our land. Just trying to clean some of that stuff
Right,
up.
right.
So all we're looking for is a signature on the MOU because we have a contractor who is ready to blow and go. REM has said, and I certainly, if I'm incorrect or have misunderstood, I apologize, that he wanted to add in the easement to connect to the outfall as part of this. Being that I certainly see this as separate, everything associated with pure water and the transmission lines and all that, let's clean it up. That makes sense. When we enter into an outfall agreement is when we'll do an easement there. And I just wanted to make sure that it was more clean in that way. And I know that was an issue. I'm not sure if you've had that discussion with Garrett. We totally understand you don't own the land yet. You, Marina Coast, don't own the land yet. We don't want to, and we think it's not useful to go to Seaside and go, hey, let us sneak in there and then just dedicate it. That doesn't make much sense for partners to be doing that. So I just want to get the MOU signed because we're not going to have an easement. You're right, because of the ongoing discussions with Seaside as soon as we can, so we don't incur any delay claims from a contractor.
Yeah, and I'm not privy to your conversations with REM, and so we let the two elephants go and do the elephant thing. Work it out.
Yeah, and I think you're in the midst of doing that with Garrett. So I think Rem and I have sort of said, yeah, make this happen. I think we all know the schedule. We know the ramifications. There's alternatives. We certainly don't want to go down the path, but, oh, it's not up there. We could, instead of doing the little pipeline dealy, Bob, the 10,000 feet that are out there, we could put a pump station in. And yeah, that's not ideal. We like gravity, frankly, and we like loop pipelines, but that's an alternative. It would certainly delay this project another year probably and cost a bunch more money. We would prefer not to do that, but it's an option. It's a technical option.
Well, we'll get the big elephants to mate and then the technical elements to go ahead and do their thing too.
So any further comments or questions by the committee? Seeing none, I'm gonna take it out to Mr. Wagner online I'm gonna allow him to comment on this since he's been waiting for a long time, even though this is an info item.
Thank you. Yeah, most of my questions were answered when they gave the explanation on the thirsty well. Just want to verify I understood that properly. The Santa Margarita Aquifer has a thickness of approximately 300 to 500 feet. The wells, the casing in the wells goes to a depth of about 1,000 feet. And I presume that the aquifer is somewhere towards the bottom of the well, and the sweet spot is somewhere between in that 300 to 500 foot range. Is that correct?
I'm gonna kick that to Mr. Lindau.
So the question was, where does the Santa Margarita start?
Yeah, I guess that would be, where does the Santa Margarita start? How far down is it? And how far
Well,
deep?
you actually
Well, I think he nailed it.
yeah, I'll give him that. Really, the layered cake is you have a 300 to 400 feet of vadose zone.
Okay,
Those just means this kind of the skin. That's the Aroma sands. Then you have a Paso Robles aquifer, which is used to some extent by production wells, but then it's the Santa Margarita. That's the big water supplier for this basin. But yes.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Do you have any further comments?
yes, I did. Are there any other known aquifers at a deeper depth that have not been drilled down to or that could be used in the future as well?
Sir, we usually don't do a Q&A here, but do you know how many further questions you have? And
That's
maybe you
it.
could submit them to us later. I'm sorry?
That was it. That's the only other question.
Okay, can you ask that one again, please?
Yeah, are there any other aquifers at a deeper depth than the Santa Margarita aquifer that you know about?
But the Paso
That could
Robles
be
isn't considered a high
potentially used.
production.
Go ahead.
The only two aquifers that are being used in that area are the Paso Robles and the Santa Margarita. Not to my knowledge, there's not a deep in that
Isn't there
area.
like basically an aquitard and nothing else
Yep.
below it?
Right.
Kind of confined.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very kindly.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you for the information item. Appreciate the information. Very complicated, complex item. Thank you for taking care of it for us. And we'll go on to item 9. And that is Mr. Lindell.
Chair Smith, committee members, the action item in front of you is to add $480,000 of construction contingency to the existing AWPF expansion project. What the 480,000, you can see in the staff report, there's 6 different owner-initiated optimization improvements to the existing facility that have been identified, that are identified during construction. And so instead of using up the original $1 million in contingency that the board already granted us, of which we've spent about 212,000, when we have a big chunk of owner-initiated change orders, what we like to do at the program level is ask for the contingency, not burn up the original contingency. We still have 6-7 months to go, and get that money built into the contingency so we can proceed with those change orders and hopefully finish the job with the original contingency. So the 480,000 again would be layered on top of the 1 million. So we end up with 1.48 million in total contingency. And then it's noticed that at the end of the staff report, even with that increased contingency, the total project is still coming in at 3% less than we originally budgeted for. So there's no impact to the total program budget. And we're getting all of these M1W initiated, all these operator initiated changes, no gold plating, just things that have been identified over the 4 years of operations that probably should have been done to begin with, and or our operators are obviously the MacGyvers, the smartest operators on the West Coast. They're saying, let's do it this way. So we're able to get this work done in the context of this expansion project.
Thank you very much. Any member questions? Kent?
No, I'm pointing at Tom.
Oh, Director Moore?
So the reason why it's still likely to come in slightly under budget, even if we use up all the contingencies, is some of the other items within the original budget came in below budget.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we'll just check in the public, online public, if anyone would like to comment on item 9. Now is the time. Right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board for action.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and take a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Mr. Lindau, we'll move on to item 10. Mr. Lindau.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So this action item is similar in spirit to the last action item. However, for the injection well phase 4 project, to the tune of $950,000, we'd like to add that amount to the original $1 million contingency. In the case of the injection well facilities out there, this is a very striking or valuable addition. As you know, each of the 4 existing wells have a backwash pump. It gets used every single week for 2 hours. If you can't backwash, ultimately you can't use your well. Well, back in 2017, when those existing facilities were being designed, money was hard to come by. That project, which was built in 2018, saved this $1 million by not putting in a separate VFD for every one of the 4 pumps. So those 4 pumps share one VFD. If that VFD goes down, then it's 4 wells that will be in danger of not being usable. So what this does, this adds a second VFD that allows all 4 pumps to rotate who uses that particular VFD. So we're doubling the reliability of all 4 wells by proceeding with this project. Yes, it's a lot of money. We're rehabbing an existing electrical building, but staff identified this early on, and it was had a lot of support at all levels of management. So with that, I'll hand it back. And again, in the case of this project, even with this increase in contingency, we're still 11% under the original budget. So this is still coming in well under what we had budgeted and expected to pay.
That's great. Okay, we'll take it to the committee for questions and, Director Moore, I'm sorry, Williamson. I know.
Mayor.
Gosh, now you made me lose my question. Is the goal to have each well have its own?
No, ultimately, we believe it's reliable enough.
Okay.
Now, the two new wells each have their own. Because again, in the context of the expansion, as you know, we have $42 million worth of grants. Thank you very much. And a hefty WIFIA loan. So when we went into that design, we said, let's give each of the new bigger wells their own VFDs. So that those two wells, if you will, are the ultimate, but also the most expensive approach to the electrical equipment.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further questions, Director Williamson? Just to make sure I
That was really
correct that.
Williamson. That was like really tough. Yeah, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Director Moore?
No questions.
Oh, Director Hibino.
So Dave, on the approval of the $950,000 increase, are you saying that that's what it's going to take to put that extra VFD in? Is that solely just for that VFD, or is it saved for something else?
So we've actually gotten the change order itself. And it originally came in at, I think it was 998. We've gotten them down to 978. And so we knew when we, submitted this staff report, we needed to be close. So we're asking for 950, and between 950 and 978, we'll cover that with our original contingency, that kind of rounding error, if you will. So we have a hard change order. We're still trying to beat it down, tearing it apart, putting it back together. But to have this contingency in place will allow both the director of engineering and the general manager to sign that change order on November 26th. So the day after the full board approves this, with that contingency in place, we'll be able to give them the green light on the VFD modifications.
But it does include the VFD installed, tied into the system, the
Existing
instrumentation
wells.
system and everything. So it's soup to nuts getting that VFD in.
Yes.
And then one more is so you were saying that it would have, so one VFD would control two and the other one would
No,
control.
all four wells can use either VFD.
Okay.
So Tammy was just reminding me, it's a really manual process right now to have one VFD for 4 wells, just swapping it when you're doing it each time. So no, having two provides some redundancy, number one, if this goes down, but also makes it a little easier for the crews in backwashing.
Could I ask a follow-up question? How much staff capacity are we spending in moving it from one to another?
They go out there probably 2 times, 3 times a week.
And then how long is that?
Like a
When
couple
they're out there,
hours?
how long is that?
It doesn't take long, for an hour or 2.
Adds up.
Yeah, it adds up.
'Cause I'm
It
just-
should have been automated to where we didn't have to go out there at all.
Well, and I guess part of where my question is going with it, and my original question is, would there be value in eventually looking at having a separate VFW for each?
Yes.
Somebody has some feelings about this.
Part of the reason why that doesn't come immediately to the forefront is the electrical building we have, we need a separate new building. In other words, you run out of space. So this new equipment is being shoehorned in as it is. And so then the cost, there'd be a quantum jump in the cost to do one for each. And again, from it's not unusual to have pumps sharing VFDs. We just felt to have a single VFD being able to take out 4 backwash pumps, 4 wells, was unacceptable.
Director Moore?
So, yeah, let me ask you a question. These VFDs are associated with pretty high voltage electrical panels, correct? And those things have very infrequently, but sometimes been known to create an electrical flash that can be potentially fatal.
Yes.
Does this manual switching process in any way increase the risk to our staff? Or are they pretty much isolated from it?
My understanding of the design is that this additional variable frequency drive will have all the appurtenances and enclosures and equipment around it to minimize the potential for what we call arc flash
Right.
hazard. So the short answer to your question is no, it will not increase risk. to
well,
staff.
If
I'm
anything, I think he's asking, will it decrease because our people aren't out there swapping back and forth all the time?
right, right. Is the current
Okay, yeah,
swapping
yeah, so
creating any
there's less
risk?
staff time spent in front of high voltage electricity manually switching things. So
The less time it's spent in front of it, the better off you
Yeah.
are,
Yes.
generally
that's a
speaking.
good, that's a good point. That's a good,
Okay.
very good point. It's there.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll check with the public online for any potential comments on this item. And if you're online and you wish to comment, please do so now. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board for further discussion / action.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion, questions?
I just have one question. What is the lifespan of a VFD?
Typically, yeah, 10, 15 years. But the majority of the cost of this project is actually all the electrical enclosures and appurtenances. So once you have that in place, the actual variable frequency drive, the electronic instrument, could easily be swapped out in the future. And that will be significant, that will cost significantly less than the amount of this change order.
So generally speaking, in our loan for pure water, we have a renewal and replacement that constantly goes in there. The loan requires that. We've put together a schedule of when we think we'll need to start spending money, some of it being on membranes, which will, I'm not going to say fail, but will need to be replaced in 7 years. A lot of electrical equipment or rotating equipment, major maintenance or replacement in 15 to 20 years and so on. So we have that built in to a certain degree. We're obviously always need to refine that with more information, but you know, what Matt was saying is we've tried to look at it not replacing the whole thing because that concrete slab is going to be there forever. It's the components that we think will need rehab.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, I'll go ahead and take a voice vote at this time. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes 4-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Lindau. And now we'll go to item 11 and Director Thompson.
All right, I can jump.
You want
right
to jump in? You want to do the, you want me to do the background? I'm just going to touch on something really fast. So Matt had written this.
Trying to take credit.
Yeah, I didn't do a darn thing. Matt did this. I think he'll talk about our visit up to Mainspring, which is a generated thing, which you've read in here. It was all predicated on the investment tax credit. So the calculations that are in here, the payback period, and all that sort of stuff. As we all know, with the election last week, things are changing in Washington. So when Matt starts getting into the payback period and investment tax credit between 6% to 40%, most likely 30%, what I've asked is that verbally we tell the board the boundary conditions could be significantly different in 100 days. So instead of that 30% anticipated, it could be 0. It still makes sense from a payback period. It's just a longer payback period. But we feel we need to get the board a different perspective on what the future could bring to us. So with that as a backdrop.
Yes, thanks, Paul. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Director of Engineering, Matt Thompson. First, a little background. As I'm sure you're aware, our agency has been experiencing some pretty serious electrical reliability issues in recent years. We have set a goal to self-generate more renewable energy for reliable operation of our 3 treatment plants. We launched a new renewable energy and electrical reliability program in 2023 and have begun a series of projects. We collaborated with Regen to prepare a renewable energy and electrical reliability study. We have been in construction of a new food waste receiving station and digester mixers in our anaerobic digesters. Last month, you approved of hiring Energia to manage procurement of food waste. This will enable us to produce much more valuable biogas. You also approved a new contract with Black & Veatch to prepare plans and specifications for our biogas handling and heating improvements project. The timing of these actions is good because all these energy-related projects have been eligible for a federal investment tax credit. For public entities like us, the investment tax credit comes in the form of direct payments from the Internal Revenue Service after the project is completed. We'll call this the ITC, the investment tax credit. The ITC amount ranges from 6% to 40% of the total project costs, with 30% being typical. This is a pretty major incentive for us to complete all of our planned renewable energy and electrical reliability improvements soon. Chai, can you bring up the first slide, please? One of the requirements for ITC funding is to start construction and incur at least 5% of the project costs before the end of 2024. Our agency has satisfied this requirement by starting construction of the food waste receiving station and digester mixers project and incurring more than $8 million of costs by the end of 2024. This will create a so-called safe harbor for ITC funding for all related projects that are completed after 2024. Now it is important to clearly identify and document all the renewable energy and electrical reliability projects that are planned for or in progress for which we intend to pursue ITC funding. So that's really the first purpose of this agenda item. This is a complete list of the projects showing the estimated total project cost and the anticipated completion date. And there's an even more detailed list in the written staff report. All of these projects are directly related to the food waste receiving station and digester mixers project that is currently under construction. After completion of construction of each project, we will apply to the IRS for payment of the appropriate ITC amount. I'm asking you to simply receive and file this list of eligible projects. The second purpose of this item is to request the board's approval for the general manager to pre-purchase some of the key equipment needed to expand renewable energy production and electrical reliability prior to December 31st this year. This will help ensure our agency receives the ITC funding for the equipment purchase and demonstrate to the IRS our commitment to completing all of the improvements that are eligible for ITC funding. Next slide, please, Chai. This exhibit should provide some context for this request. To summarize, we are proposing to stop directing the biogas we produce to the existing cogeneration system. A higher and better use of the biogas is to upgrade it to market quality renewable natural gas, inject the renewable natural gas into the PG&E pipeline, and collect revenues. Our agency can expect to receive new revenue, potentially of up to $6 million per year from renewable natural gas sales and associated renewable energy credits. Although this may be very lucrative for our agency, we will still need to self-generate electrical power for reliable operation of our 3 treatment plants. We have been exploring technologies available to generate clean power from natural gas, biogas, or a combination of both. We envision a new system in which we purchase low-cost natural gas and use it to self-generate clean electrical power at much less than the retail cost of PG&E power. We've been vetting new power generation technology by Mainspring Energy of Menlo Park, California. Mainspring produces linear generators that use a low temperature chemical reaction to convert biogas and natural gas to electrical power at 46% efficiency. This is remarkable electrical generation efficiency compared to the typical 28% efficiency of our existing internal combustion engines. Paul and I and other staff, next slide, please, Chai, recently visited Mainspring Energy's manufacturing facility in Menlo Park. We found it to be a very well-established company with excellent growth projections. Here's a photo of a typical Mainspring linear generator. It's about 8 feet wide and 20 feet long. It's actually built into your typical kind of Connex container.
With 4 fashion models in front of it.
Yeah.
Rachel looked great.
You.
The generator, it's enclosed in a sound attenuating weather rated enclosure. It actually emits very little noise. You could stand right next to it and have a conversation. Very quiet. Mainspring Energy had performed some financial modeling for us. If we were to purchase 5 250 kilowatt capacity linear generators at a quoted price of $3.8 million and factor in approximately $1.3 million for installation costs, we could produce up to 1,250 kilowatts of clean electrical power at 12 cents per kilowatt hour. This is very low cost power compared to the current operations of our cogeneration system, which is at about 21 cents per kilowatt hour. And it's certainly much less than the cost of PG&E power, which is currently at about 27 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's significantly lower cost power. If we replace the old cogeneration system with Mainspring linear generators, we can reduce our agency's electrical costs by approximately $770,000 per year. These savings, combined with an ITC credit of 30%, would pay back the cost of the linear generators in 3.5 years. Of course, if we do not get the 30% discount on the project cost, that payback period would be a little bit longer, 5 to 7 years, something to that effect. The useful life of the linear generators is 20 years, which is much longer than the payback period of this equipment. So our agency would realize a major cost savings over the lifetime of this equipment. All right, in addition to these economic benefits, Mainspring linear generators are better for the environment than the existing cogeneration system. By using a low temperature chemical reaction instead of combustion to convert fuel to electricity, the linear generators have ultra low emissions. This would enable us to run the linear generators continuously rather than occasionally, like during a power outage when we run our diesel generators. Since the linear generators may be fueled by either biogas or natural gas, the linear generators will continue to run even during a grid power outage, which will greatly improve electrical reliability at our treatment plants. Next slide, please, Chai. At this point, I'd like to recommend to the board to authorize the general manager to pre-purchase 5 linear generators from Mainspring Energy for an amount not to exceed $3.8 million prior to December 31st, 2024. We will continue working with Best & Krieger to ensure this procurement is properly documented and does not conflict with other federal financing requirements. We have a draft resolution justifying the sole source of this to Mainspring Energy that we will present to the full board with this item on November 25th. Thank you for considering this request. I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. I just have a couple of comments. I think seems to me that we file the list to preserve our rights, and then we purchase the generators in any event, even though if there's a change, we could end up not getting that tax credit of 30%. We still are going to see a benefit, it seems to me, which wasn't apparent to me until the report. So now that's very clear, and so I would think that it sounds like a good deal still at this point.
Yeah, I think, if I may, the generator is a different technology. It's very simple, it's clean. It is more expensive than a standard generator of a similar size, but there's some other benefits, as you can expect, as you can imagine. The reason we're sort of pushing this and saying, hey, can we buy it now, is not because Matt wants it under the Christmas tree, but because we need them anyway. So whether we buy it now or buy it in a year, what it now does, it allows us, if the investment tax credit survives, it's that mark basically saying, hey, we did this before the 31st. So that's, in my mind at least, the true benefit is that if the ITC is around, we can benefit from it. If it's not, we're really not, we're staying with a consistent business plan on what to do. We're just doing it earlier than we normally would have done.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense to me. Director Moore.
So if you could put the presentation back up and go back about 3 slides from the end, or those who have the board packet open on page 27, there's a diagram of this system, and I want to ask a couple of questions about it. Keep back.
One more.
Yeah,
Right
there
there.
we go. So the gas conditioning, am I correct in assuming that what comes out of gas storage and out of biogas contains some chemicals that PG&E doesn't want in its pipelines, so that the gas conditioning process shown here removes those chemicals?
That's correct.
So there is one arrow missing, and that is, what is the waste product output of the gas conditioning process, and what are the ramifications of handling that waste?
So that particular piece, gas conditioning, the way it works is called an iron sponge. And it's essentially wood chips that are impregnated with a ferric chloride solution. The gas flows through this bed of wood chips, and the hydrogen sulfide, the stinky stuff in the biogas, adsorbs onto those wood chips. Over time, you monitor the sulfur levels on the discharge, and it gets spent. You have to pull out this wood chip media, and essentially looks like mulch, like compost. It's high in sulfur. In fact, some people look at it as beneficial, almost like soil amendment. So that's the big byproduct of gas conditioning. After removal of the hydrogen sulfide, there's still some compounds called siloxanes. It's a silica-like material that we want to remove, because in a higher temperature reaction, the silica can turn to glass and damage the combustion or the reaction chamber. So to treat that, we use a bed of granular activated carbon to remove the siloxanes. Similar to removal of hydrogen sulfide, you monitor the output of it, and when there's breakthrough, you have to replace the carbon media, but that carbon media can be regenerated. It's usually taken off-site and regenerated off-site, and you replace it with
So
fresh media.
there would be a cost for the disposal of used carbon media to some company that regenerates activated carbon and deals with the siloxanes it takes off.
Yes.
Is the ferric chloride contaminated, sulfur contaminated wood chips, does that have to go into a toxics landfill or is
It-
that a
it's not-
saleable product?
It can be used beneficially. It could be spread on land and used as soil amendment. But what I've seen, it's typically just disposed of in a typical municipal landfill. The pollutants in it do not accumulate to a level where it's considered toxic waste.
Certainly if we could find, a way to keep it out of the landfill and find some other beneficial use locally or a market for it, that would be a good thing. If we are feeding these mainspring linear generators in part with unconditioned biogas or conditioned biogas?
It would be conditioned biogas
Okay.
because we do not want to damage the linear generators with the hydrogen sulfide or siloxane.
I think it's important to specify on the little drawing here, it would be the gas conditioned. So what Matt talked about,
Right.
the hydrogen sulfide, siloxane's gone. It would not be the RNG upgrading gas. So there's another, if you're saying what are the other arrows of waste product, there's another emission off the RNG upgrading as well.
And
But
what is that?
that's primarily nitrogen, a small amount of CO2, and some oxygen.
You're essentially concentrating the methane.
Exactly. You're going from 60% methane to 90% methane.
Right.
You're concentrating at very low emissions. But you're absolutely right. There's other stuff coming out. The gas conditioning, they're simple little filters. It's like you would have on, a carbon filtration for your water treatment plants. Similar things. You get to break through and you take care of it.
But you have to dispose of it in
Yep.
some way. Just wondering how much and what that might cost. We probably don't want to miss those costs in the overall
Correct.
calculation here. And then lastly, on the mainspring linear generators, since this is new technology, you did say that it's not combustion, but it's a chemical reaction. I hasten, however, to point out that my high school chemistry teacher said that combustion, whether it's in a gasoline engine or a diesel engine, is all a chemical reaction. So can you articulate the
Yeah.
different, what is the different chemical reaction going
Yeah,
on?
that's-
As long you can, Matt, as long as you don't get into gas laws.
All right.
Okay.
So-
No PVNRT stuff.
No, I won't do that. You're correct. They're both chemical reactions. Combustion is using a spark or
Ignition.
a flame to burn the fuel at a high temperature. Consequently, you emit more nitrous oxides. Okay. You can actually extract energy from fuel in the absence of a flame or a spark.
Diesel engines do that
Mhm.
to a certain extent.
That's right. The right combination of pressure and temperature, you can cause an expansion reaction, which is driving these oscillators that induce a current using magnetic induction to produce electricity. And that's exactly what these linear generators do.
Okay.
So consequently, the NOx emissions
Or low,
are an order of magnitude lower
right?
than a typical internal combustion engine. So we think that the system, we didn't elaborate on this, would be very simple to get air permits for.
Maybe the
Because it will
regional,
it significantly reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from our treatment plant property.
does the Regional Air Quality Control Board have any money for grants?
We'll certainly be looking for that. And actually, these generators are really interesting technology that, frankly, Tom, I think you would love to dive into.
Geek out on?
I wasn't going to say that.
Yeah, well,
but
that's okay. It's all right.
yes.
I don't mind.
They're really cool.
Thank you.
Any further questions from directors? Director Abito?
Hey, Matt. So I have a question about, so I see here it can be pretty lucrative at $6 million per year for the RNG sales. But in terms of PG&E, there's no contract. I mean, they could kind of move the goalpost on you a little bit. I mean, is there a guarantee?
Not right now. So that we've talked about that. And so the current tariffs for RNG, it's about 7 times the value as purchasing natural gas. So hence the reason when he did his calculations, he's like, hey, we're going to buy some natural gas. We're going to, with our biogas, we're going to condition it and sell it at 7 times the cost that we're buying it. That's what this is predicated on. What we have discussed is we don't know where the market will be in 10 years or 5 years even. Sort of like the solar market has changed over the last 20 years where those tariffs have dropped and things have come possibly into a different alignment. The way Matt is proceeding with the design is to have some flexibility. So the next people sitting here, if the tariffs drop, we can say, okay, we're not going to sell to PG&E because it's more cost beneficial to condition it and then use it. So have the flexibility to either use natural gas or a conditioned biogas or a combination thereof. So the numbers you see are on today's tariffs that we have looked at. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Black and Beach will take another look at this as part of the design project that you approved last month to dial that in a little further. But there's no guarantees for 10 years from now or 40 years from now.
There's no, you can't be grandfathered into a certain kind of like NEM 1.0 versus 2.0.
Now, I think it's going to be one of those things where hopefully with PG&E you can get a contract of a given length, but it's not going to be into perpetuity. I think what we've seen from the CPUC is that they do change after a number of years. I don't know if you've had other experiences in that.
Great. Yeah.
And then is there any other money out there in terms of the, like, wasn't there quite a few grants out there for SCHIP?
Yeah. So
Good point.
this is an interesting one. All of you, when we pay our electricity bills, you might see a line item on your bill for energy efficiency programs that goes into a pot of money that the California Public Utilities Commission controls. And they require the big utilities like PG&E and SoCal Edison to have this self-generation incentive program, essentially creating financial incentive to decentralize the production of power. And so the self-generation incentive program, or SCHIP as we call it, is very popular. You have wind projects, solar projects, biogas, geothermal, all varieties of distributed energy projects pursuing it. Currently, there's only about $18 million in SCHIP funding remaining in PG&E's SCHIP program. So to be conservative in our calculus, which arrived at this 12 cents per kilowatt hour of produced power, we did not assume that we would receive SCHIP money. Nonetheless, this project may be eligible for SCHIP, and we're going to explore it, and we are going to pursue it if appropriate. And what we do know is that SCHIP money can be stacked. The benefit can be stacked with ITC funding.
And isn't SCHIP also, we would have to use biogas to produce electricity through these things to qualify? So I mean, there's conditions on it that we are absolutely focused on, and if we can make it work, we'll apply. But I'm just trying to be more realistic in there are so many conditions and a limited pot of funds. We just didn't want to lead you the wrong way.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take it out to Mr. Wagner for his public comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, agree with Paul. It's really cool. I took a look at a YouTube video that Mainspring put out while you guys were talking about it. And Tom, with your permission, I'll go ahead and email that to you.
Thank you.
It explains how it works. It's a low temperature explosion, like in a diesel engine. 2 cylinders going back and forth with the explosion in between, but it's a low temperature explosion. So the YouTube explains it quite well. Is that okay to send that to you?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, thank you, sir. Go ahead and close public comment. Bring it back to the board for action. We have a motion on the floor.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? And this will be, motion will be for both actions, correct? Dr. Moore?
Absolutely.
Seconder? Okay. I'm using all kinds of names today out here, you know. Kind of a weird day. I don't know what's wrong. I'm not, you know, it's okay. I'll go ahead and take it to a voice vote. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much, everybody. And now we'll go to staff reports.
Thank you, Chair Smith. So I meant to do this at the beginning, but we'll do it now. Some of you have met Lawrence Chu, our new Director of Finance, but I wanted to introduce him here as well. Lawrence comes to us. He started last Thursday, right?
That's first thing.
He's been here a whole week already.
You're still here.
Yeah, he keeps coming back. He comes to us from the city of Emeryville as Director of Finance there. He has primarily public sector experience, both with water districts, transportation districts in a number of cities. So we're very happy to have him on board and that he keeps coming back. So I also wanted to bring up, I had the opportunity to participate in a potable reuse workshop in Orange County, at Orange County Water District. It was put on by California Water Reuse and National Water Research Institute. It was invite only, about 50 people, diving into some of the issues surrounding direct potable reuse, indirect potable reuse, CECs, contaminants of emerging concern, AI, and workforce issues. And it was a good first step as the state embarks upon more of plants like ours. And it's always a good time to hear the smartest people in the industry talk about something that everyone's passionate about through different perspectives.
And you were a speaker?
Well, I didn't talk a whole lot.
Sorry, you're giving me so much material today.
What if IT can mute that mic?
Turn me up.
And also wanted to bring up, Mike is going to Association of California Water Agencies at the beginning of December. Some of it to just participate as well as meet with the Bureau of Reclamation, but he is also speaking on Thursday the 5th on pure water and water sources during drought. That's all I had.
Just wanted to say, those of you that go to the RTP, there's a safety sign before you enter the gates that say how long it's been since the last safety incident causing time off. And so our previous record was 344 days and we surpassed that on Tuesday. So we're going to wait until it goes to an entire year before we celebrate. So I hope, knock on wood, that I didn't jinx it.
And being that you guys are effectively employees, do not hurt yourself here.
That's all I have. Thank you.
So that's how the robo possibility.
If you hurt yourself, I might drag you off site to preserve our record. Matt.
I have just a quick good news item. Several months ago, you may remember letting a contract for the repair of a highly degraded pipeline at the headworks of our regional treatment plant. I call it the four-doored interceptor pipe. Our contractor has been performing that particular project, and we were pushing hard to get it done before the beginning of the wet season. But we wanted to add value to that project. And so while the headwork structure was shut down to accommodate this pipeline replacement project, we took the opportunity to reline the interior of the concrete headwork structure. You may remember letting an approximately $500,000 change order for that work. We were also pushing hard for that to get done before the beginning of the wet season. And I'm happy to report that that project, both parts of it, are now substantially complete and the headworks are back in full operation. Thankfully, we haven't had much wet weather thus far, but we think the headworks are in good shape and ready for the wet weather season. So,
And back in operation with the new liner.
Yes.
Good.
Piggyback on that, so this entire project that took a while, we had 14 shutdowns, and a shutdown means that our maintenance team has to go to all the pump stations and basically stop flow going to the headworks while the contractor does work. And usually it's between midnight and 5 o'clock in the morning. So I just want to say thank you to all of our maintenance folks that supported this endeavor, because it did take a lot of after hours work.
I did want to bring up, and I'm sure Chai would if I didn't, that at the board meeting, on the 25th. We do have the board dinner afterwards. So I just want to remind everyone of that. Okay, we're going to mute 2 microphones. Lawrence, did you have anything?
No, I
don't. Okay.
Mike does.
Mike.
So yesterday we hosted a tour for the Southwest Membrane Operators Association. Their annual conference was in Seaside at the Embassy Suites, and we had a full tour bus, about 55 people. Came and we showed them both SVRP and the demonstration and a quick look into the AWPF. So very well received, really good. And then today we also had a stormwater training session for a lot of the municipalities and member entities, and probably incredibly well attended. We had 50 in-person people that showed up, and then about 47 joined online. So just trying to assist all those member entities.
You don't have anything, right?
Anything else? And Mr. Gilpin, you have anything?
I do not have anything, Mr. Smith.
Okay.
Look forward to seeing you in a week or two.
Just wanted to hear your voice.
Congratulations to all of you who got elected.
Oh, thank you. All right, that's it. That brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, everyone. And meeting is adjourned.
He didn't even give us a chance.
Doesn't want to go at all.
Just a quick comment, which I think I made also before Budget and Personnel. Given the results of the election and the new administration saying that they are likely to impose quite a few tariffs on a variety of things, would certainly urge staff to take a look, particularly at our consumables contracts and other impending needs, whether they're vehicles or whatever the stuff is, and maybe we accelerate those purchases before tariffs start hitting. And maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't think the big businessmen are going to see those tariffs if they're in place and say, I think I'll take that out of my profits and not pass that on to the buyers. I'm just not sure that will be the decision they
Yeah,
make.
like our membranes are at least the Sinor ones were from China. So we're at 5 years. I don't know what Jose and company are thinking on that one.
Yeah, anyway, just please give that some thought.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank